Major League Baseball executives are teasing something truly crazy for the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, we know there's a world where Bichette is no longer a part of the team starting next year, but they're suggesting something even more ludicrous. So we'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And we got some more tidbits of news coming out for you guys. And this one just got a little bit crazier. I know we had a video on Juan Soto the other day and the possibility of the Blue Jays being in on him. I really think that they are going to be in on him, but remains to be seen whether or not they're a serious player in the mix to acquire his services. Now, another crazy report that has come out has been centered around Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as well. Now, it's not for the reasons you may think. It's not talking about an extension. It's talking about maybe offloading both of them and just starting from scratch if you're the Blue Jays. Now, is that smart? I don't think so, but it's a real possibility according to anonymous executives.
Yeah, Mark Feinsand, a notable reporter, came out and dropped a bit of a bomb of an article today. And let's just dive right into it. Let's not waste any more time. So the headline of the article is, will Vlad or Bo be moved? Executives discuss the Blue Jays options ahead of a very pivotal winter. And given the current, landscape of the Jays, this is a very, very pivotal winter. And they basically say, and I'm going to dive into some of the different quotes by the rival executives and then the couple that are the biggest pieces here. But you can see this one. It basically says they are committed to seeing what this group can do before they blow it up. If they were willing to move the bigger pieces, they could certainly add some legit depth to their system, but they'd have to take a step back. And they basically mentioned some stuff that happened at the deadline. Another executive from a different team said that they still have some real talent. I don't think it's crazy to run it back and sell at the deadline if it's going well. They could also miss the chance to accelerate a reset if guys like Vlad and Gausman struggle. Both could likely net some interesting prospects. And Peter, there's just every executive here says similar things. Aim to contend next year, then rebuild. Aim to contend next year, sell at the deadline. The rotation should be solid. But Peter, I'll dive into the quote here in a minute. But what are your thoughts on this part before we get into the little bit of the crazy, quotes here by the executives? It seems like everyone is on the same page. The Jays are going to contend and then sell at the deadline if they don't end up being the team that we thought they were going to be this year and that they hope to be next year.
Yeah, that's a likely scenario that could happen, but I just think it's smarter to lock down the guys that you think are going to be here for the long haul, and Vladdy is one of them, in my opinion. So you got to lock him down. I think that's the first order of business. And then if you want to retool, you could still retool around Vladdy because it's not like he's 30 and he's entering free agency. He's 25 and he's still got a lot of prime years left to go. So I think the best course of action is to extend him and then work around that. So if you have a couple of rough years in the first portion of that contract that you gave to Vladdy, then so be it. You kind of signed up for that, but you're going to have some money to spend, and there are a lot of holes to fill on this roster, not just on the offensive side of things. I mean, the bullpen needs a complete overhaul, and Chad Green is a nice piece to have, as well as Jordan Romano, and hopefully Eric Swanson can get back to some sort of form that he had in 2022 and even dating back to last year. But that's a lot to bank on, right? So you have those three guys that you expect to be big parts of your bullpen, as well as maybe Genesis Cabrera.
Yep.
And then everything after that, everyone in the bullpen right now, everyone that's a part of that unit is most likely a depth piece going forward. Like Tommy Nance has been fine and he's come in and done some good work for the Blue Jays, but is he someone that you want pitching in medium to high leverage situations if you're looking to contend? There's no way. Now, I don't know off the top of my head what free agents are going to be out there that could truly be realistic options for them, because we know that the Blue Jays haven't really been the team to spend in the bullpen market like they've spent on other assets like outfielders like George Springer, or they've brought in other expensive free agents, but it's never really been their MO to go out there and spend big on relievers. And I don't think that's ever going to be their MO. Maybe they could look in the trade market. They got a lot of prospects during this deadline. So who knows? Maybe the offseason, the market will soften up a little bit and they can flip some of those guys that they don't think are going to be big leaguers for some big league arms. But you have a lot of changes to make. And I don't think they're going to be competitive unless they spend a ton of money and unless they make a ton of changes. And they could, but realistically, like how many guys can they add this offseason remains to be seen.
Yeah, the bullpen is. I mean, Chad Green's been phenomenal the whole year. Is starting to. We'll go with burnout at this point. I mean, the Jays bullpen in general has lost them a lot of games, but they're not trying to necessarily. Not that they're not trying to win, but they're not in a playoff race here. But again, another executive. It says that they're in a bit of trouble when it comes to how successful they can be because of their short term, the contracts that are left with Vladdy and Bo. But Peter, let's just dive right into it here. Now, this is the big hitter from this whole article, and I sense there's interest on their part to move Bo Bichette. An AL executive said, buying a guy out of his RBers and not extending him further sends a message that either he or they have concern past the 6 years they have him. Now, we kind of knew about Bo Bichette, but this is just another executive report signifying that. But the second paragraph here is the more interesting one. It says, it seems like they'd be willing or they'd be selling low on Bichette and may just be better off seeing if he rebounds, another AL executive said. But if there's a Corbin Burns-like return for Vlad, two or more players who can help now, they should consider it. There's really no easy answer. I think anything along the all-in to tear it down spectrum is defensible here. And basically, if you go through and read the entire thing, obviously they're talking about trading Bo Bichette. They could potentially, they mentioned a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. trade if it gives you something like a Corbin Burns type return that, of course, the Brewers got. But Peter, what are your thoughts on this? This is very interesting to me. It hints at a Vlad trade. Obviously, the Bo Bichette trade we kind of knew about, and we still actively. I mean, I personally think he'll probably be moved this offseason, but they're hinting at the fact that, hey, if the Jays get a completely overwhelming offer for Vlad, maybe a team like the Mariners or even the Astros is one that we've heard a ton that they might have to consider it. I'm super against that, but it's what the AL executives say.
Yeah, and the Corbin Burns trade is, I don't think it's a great example because he was never returning to
Yeah.
Milwaukee. So that is why they ended up making that trade. And yeah, Joey Ortiz and DL Hall have helped them out this year, but they already had a pretty good team. So it's not like they were gutting themselves. I think the situation for Vladdy is a little bit different because he has been vocal about wanting to return to Toronto and being a Blue Jay for life. Those were his words exactly. I'm not making things up there. He said those things. They came out of his mouth, and he seems to be pretty content with the situation right now. I know obviously you want to win and you want to be able to compete in the playoffs, which the Blue Jays haven't done around Vladdy and Bo, but I think this is this nucleus right now that we're seeing. Vladdy being the leader with a lot of complementary pieces around him. I think that's a blueprint for success going forward. And Vladdy can be that leadership type guy. He's shown it this season. He's really turned the corner in that regard, and he's cleaned up a lot of maybe stupid mistakes that he used to make in the past. And he looks like a totally different ball player this year. Like he is the Vladdy that we saw in 2021. And I think for that reason alone, you got to build around him. And I maybe changed my tune from the start of the season because he was struggling. And then at the end of last year, he was, doing the same old, just not producing at the extent that we thought he would. But he's back to that now. And I think he's shown a big enough sample size to warrant a contract that rewards him for that. So the Blue Jays need to do that. They need to get that done. And I don't think they should be looking to trade Vladdy because even though the Brewers got a good return for Corbin Burns, I don't think Joey Ortiz or DL Hall are going to be winning individual awards or be one of the best players in baseball like Corbin Burns has been over the past half decade. Like Corbin Burns is a Cy Young candidate year in, year out. I don't think DL Hall is going to get there. And Joey Ortiz has had a nice season, but still, like, yeah, it's a good return considering that he wasn't going to come back. But I don't know if that's the direction I would go in concerning Vladdy.
Yeah, and Bo Bichette's a bit easier to swallow, but Vlad wants to be here. He's one of the best hitters. He's been the best hitter in baseball for the past couple months, and he's a player that you can build around. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. A bit of some unexpected news today regarding this from AL executives. Get some insight into what the Jays are maybe doing in this upcoming offseason. But let us know what your thoughts are. We'll see you tomorrow.